as some kind of solution. But I'm not sure we're really aware what the problem is it's addressing. So I've got a couple of activities to start off, which I hope you'll experience some degree of difficulty, discomfort, which is good, which is a good thing. But let me show you what I'm doing today in the time. So we're going to experience some problems. I'm going to go through briefly the theory and evidence of dual coding, and then I'm going to give you a little test about your capacity to use dual coding, and I'm going to teach you some dual coding, a step-by-step tuition, and then I'm going to go through some general principles of the different aspects of dual coding. So for the activity, what I'd like you to do is to sit in pairs, and I don't know what's best for you, but I want, in your pairs, one of you I want you to look at the screen, and one of you I definitely want you to make sure you do not see the screen. So either you close your eyes or you swivel around. So can I give you 15 seconds to find a partner and arrange yourselves? Hello, thank you. Right, so you've arranged yourselves. Now, what I'm going to do now, I'm going to give you a lecture. A lecture. And I don't want you to take any notes. It's not going to be too long, so I know you can hold it in your memory. I know that, because I know you intimately. But I want to let you also know the end of my lecture, there'll be a couple of challenges. One of them is I want you to give a perfectly coherent, cogent and comprehensive, not asking for too much, summary of what I've said. Whatever you want to. Okay? Right, so let's go. If you aren't supposed to see the screen, make sure you can't. My lecture is about retrieval practice. And what I'm going to be doing, here's the overview. I'm going to look at the actual process involved. What does retrieval practice entail? And I'm going to look, if you go through retrieval practice, what are the direct results? And interestingly, what are the indirect results? So, going first of all to look at the process of retrieval practice, what you need to do is you need to withdraw something that you've learned. So you can't engage in retrieval practice if you haven't learned the thing you want to retrieve. So it needs to be there. And that does take effort. It takes a great deal of effort. That's why it's unpopular. Students don't like it. But as humans, we just don't like it. We've got this design principle which I adhere to, which is don't do anything more difficult than you need to. And where we go to collect this material is from our long-term memory, and we put it into our working memory. Now, I want to tell you a little story about my wife, who's very sexist. My wife is highly sexist. She claims that I was designed to look after the rubbish, the refuse in our house. So, and she'd always tell me to put things away. So she'll say to me, Oliver, put this away. Or can you get me so-and-so from the garage? Now, because I'm lazy, I know how to do laziness. What I do is, I say, yes, darling, I open the garage door and I throw the item on the floor. It doesn't take me any effort, and I go back and I say, it's all done. So have you got this as a metaphor? Throwing things into the garage is like teaching just saying stuff, so it goes in there, but it's not organised. And of course, later on, I get what's called my comeuppance, the consequence. My wife will say, Oliver, darling, please go and, can you get me the fuse for the lights? And I go, okie doke. And then on my floor, it's an enormous heap of stuff, undifferentiated. And then, I can't find it, I spend a lot of effort. Now, this part's also true, and you'll think you're really strange. I redecorated my garage, and because my father's an architect, he gave me some lovely stencils for the letters, and I wanted to pretend to my wife I was going to change. Husbands are always telling their wives they're going to change. I'm going to change. So I stenciled in my shelves, the top, I put A, B, C, D, and I went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I bet you're not as organised. It's fantastic. Then what I did, I didn't do anything else. It was a complete show, a charade, a mockery. But somehow, because the framework was there, at any stage, if you asked me where the fuses were, without any effort, I go, oh yeah, A5, B7. And I found I became highly efficient, because the more you organise something when it's going in, the easier it is to find. Now we know that's true of real things, but we sometimes seem to forget it with regard to things we put into our mind. So with regard to retrieval practice, those items that you've put on a shelf, and you know which shelf, you've encoded it properly, it will take less effort as you drag it out into your working memory. Now the result of doing that is there are some benefits. For a start, if you had a bit of effort looking for where the light fuses were, then eventually you do find them, then guess what? And it's no big surprise, you don't need psychologists to tell you this. Next time you go in the garage for light fuses, you know where they are. Same with retrieval practice. So it makes it more retrievable later. And because it takes less effort and it's easier to retrieve, there is a natural redistribution of your mental capacity, your working memory load, so that you get better at memory and transfer and inferences. So the payoffs are enormous. There are also a lot of indirect results. So it obviously provides feedback. And there are two aspects of retrieval practice as human beings we hate. One is the effort, but more painful still is the realisation we don't know half as many things as we thought we did. So it's a really terrible thing. And that gives feedback to your tenderhooks, aren't you there? Both student and teacher. And with both of them, it allows them to be better at their job of teaching or learning. And it allows them to refocus on what they should be doing. Thank you. I'd like to stop at the end of my lecture. Stay where you are. Those of you who are facing the back or aren't seeing the screen, can you start? I want a 2-minute, brilliant cogent summary. Go. Can't hear you. And thank you very much. Thank you. Hello everyone. I appreciate that you haven't finished. I wonder whether you could turn around now. Oh, and can you just check out whether what you were saying pretty much coincided with what I've put up there? What I'd love to do now is spend 10 minutes, and I don't have that 10 minutes, to discuss with you what that was like for you. And would you consider what would happen, because most of you are experts and you know all this content anyway. Can you imagine how difficult it would be if I introduced something new? Now, what I want to ask you to do is to imagine that screen up there, in some magical way, it's as if I've got a projector inside my mind, and my schema for retrieval practice has been projected onto there. That's what's in my mind. So, it's a bit reductionist, but if you consider that teaching and learning is about the content, the schema of a teacher's mind, through a variety of activities, going into the student's mind, then could you tell me any reasons why you would consistently not show your schema? If that's what you want them to get, why wouldn't you want to show it? Now, sometimes it may be useful, I grant you, but if you wanted someone to do a jigsaw puzzle, would you hand them one piece at a time so that at the end they get a moment of enlightenment? Ah, that's what I was doing. Now, those moments are nice, but it's not very efficient. Why don't you show the jigsaw puzzle at the beginning? Now, these activities are forced, so I've set you up to fail. I understand that, and you're very nice about it. I'm going to make things easier for you. I realise that I'm English, I'm speaking too fast, it's difficult. By the way, I put that story about my garage just to put you off. So if some of you are talking about my wife and she thinks I'm sexist, that was deliberate red herring. But I know humans love stories. You clung onto the story, the image of it. So I'm going to make it easier for you now. I'm going to give you some writing. You don't have to listen to me. It's a very short paragraph, short sentences, simple words. I'm only going to show it for a short while, and I'll give you immediately 3 questions. And I'm going to say something like, Mom, question number 1, give me the answer. So I'm going to go in amongst you and ask you for the answer pretty quickly. Is your heart rate? Okay, good, let's go. Easy. Okay, here they go. So Claire, as I promised, could you tell me please who the highest ranking person in the Lasagna project is? No. Who? Jeff, we'll see. Thank you. And ma'am, could you tell me which department has the most people in the project? Yes, I know. Which department has most people in the Lasagna project? Head of marketing? We'll see. Thank you very much. So, number 3. Which people are not involved in the project? Jen. Okay, just the one. Who is head of the Lasagna project? The Lasagna project, sorry, the words haven't come out for some reason. It's those in red, encircled in red. So that's who. Which department has most people involved in the project? The design. And so, which number of people are not involved in the Lasagna project? Yeah, there's quite a number of them, aren't there? So there's Jill and Erin and Jill and Carlton. So what's going on? You're really intelligent guys. And that's a really simple question. So, okay. Here's my sets of answers. I don't know whether they'll satisfy you. Here is a quote from 1930 by Bertrand Russell, one of Britain's greatest philosophers. And what he says is, if you look at a diagram, you see all the parts, the elements of a diagram in one visual view, and their relationships to one another are obvious to you. They're close, they're far apart, they're in between, they follow an arrow. And their relationships is pretty clear and immediate to you. If you want to explain those relationships with writing, you have to use quite complex syntax. So something which is essentially quite simple is made enormously more complex by language alone. So I have a provocative question. Would you be willing to consider the possibility that what you teach may not be as complex as your students think it is, due to simply through the difficulties and the constraints of grammar and sequential ordering of ideas in language? The other answer to speaking is that as soon as someone speaks, the words disappear. And I used to speak to teachers and say, your words disappear, but now I have a nice phrase, the transient information effect. So we have a problem with the difficulties of grammar and the words we've just spoken, which we need to remember in order to understand the relationship, disappear. So that you're holding onto your working memory. Unless, of course, and this is one of the major arguments for dual coding, you make sure it doesn't disappear. You offload it. Now, with regards to offloading, in 1954 there was a psychologist called George Miller who wrote an article whose title was a joke for a reputable psychology magazine, journal, and no one got the joke. and people have been copying him ever since. The title, it was George Miller, and he wrote The Magic Number 7. Plus or minus 2. It's in a scientific journal, using the word magic. So imprecise, plus or minus 2. And people have been chanting this mantra for decades. And actually more recently we find out we cannot hold 7 chunks of information. It's actually nearer 4. Now on Twitter, psychologists have criticised me for telling them what someone suggests. Consider, you know this isn't true. You've got 4 slots in your head. 4 slots. Don't fill them all up. That's all you've got is 4 slots. You need to fill 3 up if you want to. 1 needs to be left free in order to process the content of the other 3. So that will go past some of our problems. Then there's the actual Alan Pivio's dual coding. Kind of discovered it back in the 70s and worked on it pretty much all his academic life. And it is, for some evolutionary reason, we have separate channels for our auditory and our visual input. And they can and they cannot intertwine with each other. They can work separately or they can work together. So given the problems that you've just experienced, and you know is there anyway from your teaching, we're beginning to look at some areas of how our biology, how we're made up, how we can mitigate those difficulties, how we can use them to make life easier for students. You can't see who these quotes are from, it's from John Sweller. So using them can help lessen the difficulties of working memory, which we're going to consider has 4 slots. But this quite complex quote I want to talk about here. Again from Alan Pivio's dual coding. He also talks about visuals being simultaneously available, which means that any aspect of a diagram can be viewed with in one instance, and you can look at any aspect and relate it to any other aspect. You're quite free to do all that. Whereas the sequential nature of language, syntax or grammar, is a beautiful game, it's a fabulous invention by us, and it has its constraints. It has its constraints. You have to keep remembering all those words and their relationships to each other, the abstract relationships. And Mayer, who's one of the world's experts on learning in the multimedia sense, concludes, whatever some people might believe with regard to learning styles, every human being, as far as his research goes, performs better by having visuals available. Because all of us have working memory limitations. Okay, so here comes some capability. This is Frederick Reef, a fabulous book called Applying Cognitive Science to Education. And I want to link this quote to my story about the garage. How I transformed my efficiency by labelling my shelves and numbering my shelves. Because the more organised it is going in, the easier it is to find going out. However, here's the difficulty. Students can't organise. Because by definition, using your countryman Paul Kirshner's definition, if you're a student, you're a novice. If you're a teacher, you're an expert. Why would we expect novices to be able to organise information they don't know about? We're going to do topic X. Oh, get some paper out and do a mind map on it. It's bonkers. They may want to try and do one at the end, but they should have the new knowledge organised for them by the teacher. Because the teacher already has done that in their schema. So here is schema, a hierarchy of how you can organise. First of all, you just have random words. Now, if I'm speaking to you, and some of the words I think are important, I put up on the board, in no particular order, that's at least good, because of it addresses the, do you remember that phrase? The transient information effect. So I've captured some of the important words. Next, what I could do is create a list. Lists are good, but sometimes, have you ever heard that business phrase, a laundry list? You know, in a laundry bag, you just put anything in there, pants and bras and football shirts, it's all mixed up. Just because Word allows us to create a neat-looking list with bullets and it all looks really fabulous, doesn't mean it has any sense. It's just neat. Neat doesn't mean organised. So it needs to be thematically organised. And when it is, it's better than random. And then you have a network. Network do show the relationships, but on many diagrams, especially those in management books, there are arrows joining everything to everything else. And they don't tell you what the nature of those arrows depict. So it doesn't tell you what that relationship, just that, like a hippie, man, it's all connected. Which is kind of interesting, but not very useful. More useful is a straight hierarchy. A straight hierarchy. Very unsexy, straight hierarchy. Now, it doesn't have to look like a tree diagram. I'm going to show you a tree diagram depicted in a different way with a map that my son did, who has Down syndrome, when he was 9. We're going to go on that pretty shortly. The reason why the tree diagram, the hierarchy, is more effective is nested knowledge. In other words, because it's organised with subordinate and superordinate order, you just need to understand it when it goes in, and you only need to know the top one, and all the bits below come in free. They all come in free. Now I'll tell you, I don't have time to tell you a story, so I'll move on. Now, here's how you can organise things. I'm going to show you 4 ways that you can organise your content for which there are graphic organisers. Please tell me if you never use any of these 4 ways of organising in your subject. You define stuff. You compare things. Don't you, Eva? You sequence things. And you use cause and effect. And the last 2 are sometimes difficult to create a distinction between what's called a temporal relationship and a causal relationship. But it's possible. I managed to get that distinction in my children when I was in a school with severe learning difficulties. It's your practical special schools with the least able. They can understand the difference. So, when you define, here are just 2 of very many maps that serve the purpose of defining. And here are 2 that serve the purpose of comparing. There's another one that's very famous that's used for comparing. Do you know which it is? The Venn diagram. Yeah, of course. Then we have sequential graphic organisers, and we have causal graphic organisers. When I used to train teachers regularly, I used to get a teacher saying, I love my maps, and I was trained to be polite at home, but I had to question the teacher. I'm saying, to saying you like mind maps is like a carpenter saying, I like screwdrivers. Yeah, but you need different tools for different purposes. So rather than going for a graphic organiser that you like, the first job, it seems to me, is look at the nature of the knowledge that you're explaining and ask, what's the primary way it is organised? Is it by defining something? Is it comparing? Is it having a sequence? Or is it looking at cause and effect? Once you've got that clear, find the graphic organiser. And while you're going about it, why not tell the students, you know we need to organise things, tell them the garage story or your own, and tell them there are 4 ways that we can organise. Now we're going to use, and then you tell them which way of organising. Because Reef said not only should teachers organise, they should teach organisational skills. And that would come under the metacognition. And this is Isaac Jr. And he's really talking about my garage story. What he's saying is, the more labelled your garage is with shelves and numbers and everything else, the easier you'll find stuff. You know that's true of garages. It's also true of our craniums. Okay, here comes another activity now. Can I ask you to get a piece of paper and pencil? We're going to do some drawing, sketching. Now, I've got a very powerful distinction for you. Very powerful distinction. There's a difference between drawing as art, which may be what's going through your mind now as you're getting very worried, separately and completely different. So that's drawing as art. Over here we have another concept I'm introducing you to, which is drawing as communication. They're two different things. So I'm going to teach you how to draw a human being. So follow the steps. Could you please draw that? Clearly I know you're going to be enormously successful, and I'm certainly going to take away all the scaffolding. You may even guess that they might be legs, represent legs. If you can do handwriting, if you've mastered handwriting, this is simple. Next. Or maybe I could do two at the same time, that would be interesting. We're speeding up. I'm noticing you're moving from novice rapidly towards expert now. The eye and the nose, that's all you need, nothing more. Now, if I draw another rectangle, a big one and a small rectangle, then all of a sudden you transform that anonymous person into a teacher. Now, without any of my modelling, drawing on your cultural history, can you remember what graphic syntaxes we've got to represent speech and thought and add that to that person? How could you represent thought? Have you never read comics? So, what would you add to make sure, if you were trying to depict a teacher teaching, and you thought it was important that a teacher had certain principles in mind just at that moment, where would you put it? The thought bubble. And if you wanted to explain to a teacher what technique you're using, what words would you be using? So you use a speech bubble. Now they'd be addressing that to a student. So notice how you're going to rapidly go to expertise now. I'm going to give you no detailed instructions. Could you rapidly draw that student sitting at a desk? I know you may think this is patronising. I want to let you know that most of my graphics that some of you see on Twitter are no more than elaborations of this. They're no more elaborate than this. This is what they're based on. And you can add another. Actually, I'm going to move on because I guess you've got this, okay? You have now the capacity to be able to identify in step-by-step precision a particular technique that you'd like to communicate to either your class because you're going to do something new, or to a colleague because you've had great success with this technique. And rather than just giving them a title of the technique and assuming they know all the bits within it, we're going to be specific. Now, Dylan Williams in Britain has talked about something called lethal mutation. And he says it goes like this. You attend a course, and guess what? The trainer's really handsome and charming, and you go, woo, great course. And you go home, you go to school the next day, and your colleague says, what was your course like? You go, fab, the food was great, nice people there. And what you do is you go and you're convinced, one, that you've understood what Dylan Williams said. Then, I mean, you don't doubt that you are brilliant, that you understand everything. Then you go in your classroom and then you do the technique you thought Dylan Williams said was assessment for learning. Of course, you also know, as brilliant as Dylan Williams is, you know that actually you're a bit more brilliant than he is when it comes to your class. So you say, well, I missed that bit out because actually, what does he know? He doesn't actually teach anymore, and I'll do this and I'll do this. And then you kind of make up a slight variation. Next day, if someone talks to you in the staff room and says, hey, what was that course like? Have you used any of the techniques? You go, yeah, it's brilliant. Here's what I do. And then you explain. Your colleague listens to you with the assumption that they're brilliant listeners and they never misunderstand anything. And they do. They go in their classroom and they then say, it's a great technique, but I'll miss that bit because actually I'm a better teacher than her and she always does this thing which is stupid, so I'll do it this way. And so Dylan Williams says, after about 3 or 4 goes, the technique that's being used and adopted in school, one isn't understood and isn't anything like the one that they were taught. I don't know of any other profession where our professional knowledge is so loosely captured and so loosely communicated. Could you imagine the problems in surgery and engineering? Now, I know teaching is not that precise. I understand that. I grasp you. Nevertheless, I would say you have the possibility. Let me give you a few examples, if my machine still works. Okay. Why have I... sorry, my clicker hasn't worked properly. I want to show you something. John Thompson on Twitter explained a wonderful process why he still teaches English, how he went through an exam question and he was talking out his thinking. And he was doing something which a couple of years ago, if an inspector came in, they would have sacked him. The students copied from the board, but it wasn't passive, mindless copying. They were both copying what he was doing and they were creating a schema because they could both see what they were doing and they could hear what he was saying. So that's an effective way of using this very, and you can see my drawings are no more sophisticated than yours, are they? Here's a picture of me working with a deputy head in a primary school where they wanted me to go and capture exactly how they did a particular management technique so that everyone in the school could understand it. They came to this realization that even though the senior leaders were brilliant authors, they became so despondent when they realized that people didn't read their policies. If they did read them, they couldn't necessarily understand them. And if they did understand them, they didn't necessarily remember them. So together we identified what it was they were doing. And what's really useful in terms of conversation, it allowed me to ask a number of really pertinent questions because I was addressing it to my drawing and not turning around and addressing it to them, face to face. Let's look at sketch notes. Here is not a very visual sketch note in terms of drawings, but I argue, counter to what's currently claimed sketch notes should be, they should predominate with words. And here's what I think are the most important distinctions. Words are the most important part, I say. No one else says, but I say the next most important part is structure. And thirdly, if you've got any time, you do some drawing. And this, by the way, was Daisy Christodoulou, the most organised, rational speaker I've ever heard. She's actually brilliant. When we look at graphic organiser, here's my son, Down syndrome, and I helped him slightly, but this was his map. You notice how you can wander around it, notice the connections, but there's a real cultural problem there, by the way, given his name is Pascal Caviglioli. Find out what the problem culture is. Pascal foods hate pasta. We got over that. Anyway, there's a load of bumps being talked about in mind maps. 1970s Tony Buzan, dendrites, left brain, magical thinking. Let me show you what a mind map really is. That's it, nothing more than that. It's a tree diagram. There's nothing magic about a mind map. It's not a hippie way to genius. It's just a bloody tree diagram. Only you use curvy lines, and it's a good use of space because you've had it radiantly emanating from the centre. That's all it is. And therefore, if you create one, guided by your teacher because they know how to organise, you've got nested knowledge. So, for example, you only need to know hobbies, friends, foods and looks, and you probably all the other information comes along free. Let's look at the role of language or words to do with that. Here's my iPhone dictionary, and it looks at the word revolution. So a less specific term that's higher up in the hierarchy is superordinate, which is group action. A lower term is the subordinate. There are different types. Now I'm going to do an activity with you now that won't take long. I'm going to say 3 words and you're going to chant them back in the correct order. So I'm going to say 3 words and give them to you horizontally. I'll say it twice because I know it's difficult to remember 3 words. Then together, without any practice, I'm going to say, I'm going to do this, and you're going to chant out the top word, superordinate word, then you're going to chant out the middle word, and then you're going to chant out the bottom word. Okay? Okay, here it goes. Car, mini, transport. Car, mini, transport. Let's start that again. The most hierarchical, abstract word at the top. You ready? Go? Great. So what I'm asking is, do you think your students know those hierarchies in your subject? I want to contend that your more able students hang around those higher order words all the time. And that's why they have a grasp. That's why their retrieval practice is better, because it's nested knowledge. It's all been organised. I'm going to finish with nested knowledge. Thank you. Do you have any questions? Okay, I'm going to say thank you. You clap now. Thank you. I'll wait for an awkward 30 seconds because you may well have a question. Sir?
Yes. Really brilliant talk, thank you very much. So it's all about information structures, right? Which information fits to what mental model, what schema. Are there do you see any information structures which are really hard to force in a model, in a visual model?
Yes. Information isn't that clear cut. I think what teachers have to do is they have to acknowledge that knowledge of the real world is very messy, and what they're doing in a mental model, the definition of a mental model as far as I can see, is you simplified the world in order to better deal and understand with it, but recognising that the real world is more complex. But it gives you the framework with which to deal with more detail later. So in the sense of nested knowledge, you give an overview of the major sections. Then later on, you would delve into some of those in more detail. Please. Exactly. Sketchnoting's hard. 20 years ago, I had to do a graphic facilitation of a famous speaker, and it was digital, and I didn't do anything. He's a very handsome, charismatic guru who didn't say anything, just told jokes and stories. There was no content to it. So you need to have content, and it needs to be organised. It's difficult. I'm searching, every time I do sketch notes, I'm searching like mad. I wish someone would say, I'm going to talk about 3 things, here they are. All right, great, 3 columns or 3 boxes, but they don't do that. But we can as teachers. People want your seat, so I'm going to go. Thank you.